The final line of Marcus Webb's resignation letter read simply, "Some orders aren't worth following, even when they come from the top." Behind him, 11 years of loyalty sat boxed in 3 cardboard containers, and in front of him, a boardroom full of people who had never once heard him raise his voice sat in absolute silence. If you believe people deserve second chances, and that quiet courage is still courage, smash that like button, drop a comment below, share this story with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Kindness Vault so you never miss a story like this one. Marcus Webb was not a man who sought attention. For 11 years he had worked at Hendricks Logistics, rising from a warehouse floor supervisor to the head of regional operations, all while raising his 8-year-old daughter, Nora, alone since his wife's passing 3 years earlier. Every morning began the same way. He packed Nora's lunch with a small handwritten note tucked inside, drove her to Lincoln Elementary, and arrived at the office by 8:15, coffee in hand, ready to solve whatever crisis the day threw at him. His co-workers respected him not because he demanded it, but because he earned it, through fairness, through steady hands during chaos, and through a quiet dignity that made people want to work harder simply to match his example. That dignity was about to be tested in a way Marcus never expected. The trouble began on a Tuesday morning when the new CEO, Richard Callaway, called an emergency meeting. Callaway had taken over Hendricks Logistics only 4 months earlier after a corporate buyout, and in that short time, he had already earned a reputation for treating employees like expendable numbers on a spreadsheet. He believed in results above all else, and he believed that fear was the fastest way to get them. That morning, he stood at the head of the boardroom table and announced a new policy: any driver involved in an accident, regardless of fault, would be terminated immediately to protect the company's image, no investigation required. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Just 2 days earlier, one of his longtime drivers, a soft-spoken man named Elijah Marsh, had been rear-ended by a drunk driver while stopped at a red light. Elijah had done nothing wrong. Police reports confirmed it. But under Callaway's new policy, none of that would matter. Marcus raised his hand and calmly explained the situation, expecting reason to prevail. Instead, Callaway's expression hardened. "I don't care whose fault it was," he said, loud enough for the entire room to hear. "Fire him today, or find yourself replaced by someone who will follow instructions." The room went still. Papers stopped shuffling. Even the ceiling fan seemed to slow. Marcus looked around at his colleagues, people he had trained, mentored, defended in budget meetings, and saw the same fear reflected in their eyes that he felt in his chest. He thought of Elijah, a father of 3, who had never missed a shift in 6 years. He thought of what it would mean to walk into that man's life and take away his livelihood over something he never controlled. And then he thought of Nora. He remembered a rainy afternoon 2 years earlier when she had asked him, in the innocent way only children can, "Daddy, if something isn't fair, are you supposed to fix it, or just do what you're told?" At the time, he'd given her some gentle, age-appropriate answer about talking to a teacher. But sitting in that boardroom, the question echoed back at him with far greater weight, because now he was the one who needed the answer. "I won't do that," Marcus said quietly. Callaway's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" "I said I won't fire a man for something that wasn't his fault. If that's the kind of company we're becoming, then I don't think I want to be part of it." The silence that followed felt like it stretched for an eternity. Callaway leaned forward, his voice dropping into something colder and more dangerous. "Then you have a choice to make, Webb. Do as I said, or quit. Right now." Every eye in the room turned to Marcus. He could feel the weight of 11 years pressing against his chest, the mortgage payments, Nora's school tuition, the health insurance that covered her asthma medication, the retirement fund he'd built with such careful discipline. Walking away meant risking all of it. But staying meant becoming someone he could no longer recognize, someone Nora would eventually see clearly for exactly who he had chosen to be. Marcus stood up slowly, buttoned his jacket, and said the words that would later be repeated throughout the entire company like a legend: "I'd rather struggle with my integrity than succeed without it." Then he walked to his office, packed his belongings into 3 boxes without a single wasted motion, and left the building before lunch, leaving behind a boardroom full of people too stunned to speak. The weeks that followed were not easy. Marcus filed for unemployment, tightened the family budget, and spent anxious nights scrolling job listings after Nora fell asleep. There were moments of doubt, sharp, aching moments where he wondered if pride had cost his daughter a stable life. But every morning, Nora would climb into the passenger seat for the school drop-off, chatting about her science project or her friends at recess, utterly unaware of the storm her father was weathering, and something in Marcus would steady itself again. Then, almost a month later, everything changed. Elijah Marsh, the driver Marcus had refused to fire, tracked him down and told him something he hadn't known. 3 other supervisors had quietly resigned in protest after witnessing what happened to Marcus, and word had spread through the entire logistics industry. A regional competitor, Kestrel Freight Solutions, known for valuing employee welfare, reached out to Marcus directly. Their operations director had heard the story secondhand and wanted to meet the man who chose his conscience over his career. The interview lasted less than 30 minutes. 2 days later, Marcus was offered a director-level position with better pay, better hours, and a company culture built on the very principles he'd sacrificed everything to protect. When he told Nora the news that evening, she wrapped her arms around his neck and said something that broke him open in the best possible way. "I always knew you'd do the right thing, Daddy. That's just who you are." Meanwhile, back at Hendricks Logistics, Callaway's harsh policies triggered a wave of resignations and a public relations crisis that eventually reached corporate headquarters. Within 3 months, Callaway himself was quietly removed from his position, and the company began rebuilding its culture from the ground up, using Marcus's stand as an unofficial case study in what leadership should never become. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that doing the right thing is never truly wasted, and subscribe to Kindness Vault so we can keep bringing you stories that matter. Before you go, drop a comment below and tell us, would you have walked away, too? Marcus Webb never set out to become anyone's inspiration. He simply refused to let fear write the story of his life. And in the end, the very thing that seemed like it might destroy him became the foundation of something far stronger, not just for his career, but for the kind of father, and the kind of man, he wanted his daughter to remember.